14. What is called love? The lust of property and love, what different associations each of these ideas evoke! And yet it might be the same impulse twice named. On the one occasion disparaged from the standpoint of those already possessing, in whom the impulse has attained something of repose, and who are now apprehensive for the safety of their "possession." On the other occasion viewed from the standpoint of the unsatisfied and thirsty, and therefore glorified as "good." Our love for our neighbour, is that not striving after new property? And similarly our love of knowledge, of truth, and in general all the striving after novelties. We gradually become satiated with the old, the securely possessed, and again stretch out our hands. Even the finest landscape in which we live for 3 months is no longer certain of our love, and any kind more distant coast excites our covetousness. The possession for the most part becomes smaller through possessing. Our pleasure in ourselves seeks to maintain itself by always transforming something new into ourselves. That is just possessing. To become satiated with a possession, that is to become satiated with ourselves. One can also suffer from excess. Even the desire to cast away, to share out, can assume the honourable name of "love." When we see anyone suffering, we willingly utilise the opportunity then afforded to take possession of him. The beneficent and sympathetic man, for example, does this. He also calls the desire for new possession awakened in him by the name of "love," and has enjoyment in it, as in a new acquisition suggested itself to him. The love of the sexes, however, betrays itself most plainly as the striving after possession. The lover wants the unconditional sole possession of the person longed for by him. He wants just as absolute power over her soul as over her body. He wants to be loved solely, and to dwell and rule in the other soul as what is highest and most to be desired. When one considers that this means precisely to exclude all the world from a precious possession, a happiness and an enjoyment, when one considers that the lover has in view the impoverishment and privation of all other rivals, and would like to become the dragon of his golden hoard, as the most inconsiderate and selfish of all "conquerors" and exploiters, when one considers finally that to the lover himself the whole world besides appears indifferent, colourless and worthless, and that he is ready to make every sacrifice, disturb every arrangement, and put every other interest behind his own, one is verily surprised that this ferocious lust of property and injustice of sexual love should have been glorified and deified to such an extent at all times. Yea, that out of this love the conception of love as the antithesis of egotism should have been derived, when it is perhaps precisely the most qualified expression of egotism. Here evidently the non-possessor and desirer have determined the usage of language. There were, of course, always too many of them. Those who have been favoured with much possession and satiety have, to be sure, dropped a word now and then about "the raging demon," as, for instance, the most lovable and most beloved of all the Athenians, Sophocles. But Eros always laughed at such revilers. They were always his greatest favourites. There is, of course, here and there on this terrestrial sphere, a kind of sequel to love, in which that covetous longing of two persons for one another has yielded to a new desire and covetousness, to a common, higher thirst for a superior ideal standing above them. But who knows this love? Who has experienced it? Its right name is friendship.